you might hit a wall, you know, shit could hit the fan. But if you can navigate this with gratitude, I promise you, you are going to be better off.
I had kids who had been in the weight room for maybe 2 months worth of experience. I've had kids who've been in a weight room since they were age 12.
When you have strong convictions in what you believe, it becomes very natural to follow through and live that out with integrity.
I think also they're perhaps more likely to open up because we can empathize with them. And I think all of that plays into how student athletes show us their vulnerable side more so than they might another staff member.
Again, if you can fail with gratitude but succeed with grit, this whole journey is going to be a whole lot easier.
We're ready to go. Wanted to welcome everyone to week 6 of the Indiana Strength All Access, and just to thank all of you presenters today and the past and in the future, and then everyone that comes and just shows support. When you guys are here, that only helps us, you know, show support and make us grow and get even better. The feedback that y'all give us is insurmountable. So just keep it up, and we're really excited to move forward with this coming up. But today, very, very excited to have this all-star cast of group and topics that we're going on today. All of these coaches have impacted me in some capacity, and I'm just super excited. So we're going to start off with Beth Byron from Ohio State. We're going to be talking about rep integrity, and Emily Schilling will be up next on the University of Illinois, talking about the University of Illinois volleyball program. Got Marissa Viola with play, a variety of topics. I can't wait to hear about this one: authenticity, discovery, and resolution. And then we'll round it up with Jeannie Rankin with Eastern Connecticut State, talking about diversity and strength and conditioning. So should be a really good day. But first up is our very own Dustin Snyder. Will be introducing our first speaker.
All right, guys. So like Lainey said, today starting off is going to be Beth Byron. Beth is a master strength and conditioning coach. She was a former swimmer, but now is a cyclist. Enjoys doing that on her spare time on nice days. Originally from Massachusetts, but she's been to some other places. She's been to the University of Wisconsin-La Crosse, University of South Florida, West Virginia University, University of Texas, and joining Ohio State Buckeyes in the fall of 2019. She's now working with volleyball and rowing there. She is eternally grateful for family, friends, mentors, coworkers, coaches, and athletes that the Lord has placed in her journey throughout life, whether that be in coaching or outside of that. During this, I've found some things that were some irony in a lot of these things, and a lot of firsts that I noticed. So today is our first all-female lineup. Beth is the first speaker, and her first favorite quote was Proverbs 31, where the Bible paints the picture of a perfect woman. So Beth, just give us another first for today. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Coach Snyder, for that introduction. Very generous of you. And I just want to say thank you to the entire Indiana Strength staff for putting together this awesome all-access event every single week. I've enjoyed coming on and listening and learning from so many other presenters. So I'm just honored to be asked to contribute. So I really hope that I can provide you guys some valuable insight today. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen, and we'll get rolling here. All right, we good? Everyone can see that? Awesome. All right, so yes, rep integrity, and I want to talk about just applications and coaching and how that helps us with adapting to changes. So where are we going today and why it all matters? So I just want to talk about something that's extremely important to me, and I know to so many other people. This is important because with this quality, I think the way that we show this quality to others and how we observe this quality in others massively impacts our relationships and our effectiveness to do our jobs as coaches. So today we're going to talk about integrity, and for a lot of us, it is probably one of our core values. And, you know, I want to talk a little bit more about the applications to it in coaching, and then, you know, also in our own personal development as coaches and as people. So, and then next we're going to talk about adapting to changes. We all know that change is inevitable, but also having deep roots and strong foundations in your core principles helps you to navigate those changes more successfully. And then finally, I want to touch upon our abilities to empower others to use their strengths and grow, which obviously is a big part of what we do every day as coaches. So integrity, I think we probably all know the definition of integrity, yes? So I want you to just think for a moment what that definition is. Think about what it looks like to put that into action. So according to Webster's dictionary, here is your very thorough definition of integrity. And I just want to touch upon what really resonates with me personally. This is third one, the quality or state of being complete or undivided, completeness. The other thing that I think really paints a good, clear picture for me personally is the Latin root word in which we get integrity from is also the same word that we get integer from, as in a whole number. Right? So whether you have $3, you have 3 M&Ms, you have 3 cars, 3 is always 3. You add one more to that, it's always going to be 4, right? So there's that consistency and that soundness to it. So as far as integrity in life and in training, I like to use some cliche quotes, so just bear with me on that, just because I find that they stick, right? They stick in your mind. And it helps us to understand and apply things better. So I think as far as in life and in training, whether it's our personal and moral integrity or it's repetition integrity, it's kind of how you do one thing is how you do everything. And I really believe that the young adults that we have been entrusted to work with, they need to learn this. They need to see that exemplified by us and by the other people around them, right? And so we have a great responsibility to do that. So I want to talk next about why integrity is so important, but I just want to preface this and say that these are my observations from my personal experiences. This information is not from research that I've done in organizational psychology or other similar fields, right? But just from my experiences over the years. So if anybody wants to ask questions or talk more about this afterwards, I'd be more than happy to do so. Just feel free to reach out to me. But why I believe integrity is so important is because ultimately it helps to build trust. And we know that's so important, that trust in coaching and building relationships with our athletes. So, and this little cog here in the middle, that low frequency, that is a huge key component because there's so many easy, actionable ways that we can exercise integrity every single day as coaches when we're teaching our athletes and we're holding them accountable to high standards, right? But frequency is important. It has to be carried out consistently on a day-to-day basis. And I truly believe that it's an accumulation of seemingly small but very frequent interactions that build that trust over time. And we can literally do this with every single one of our athletes that we have the opportunity to coach. And I want everyone to just think for a moment. Their names and faces will probably pop into your head very quickly. But just think about some of the athletes that you're working with right now, or maybe in the past, who you connected with maybe a little more closely than others. Or even the athletes that they were the most challenging for you to work with, or they needed extra time, they needed extra energy, they required extra work, and they required extra attention from you because they were difficult and they were challenging. But through all that time and energy you poured into them, there's kind of an uncommon bond that's built in there, right? So you kind of can go a little deeper with certain individuals. You're not necessarily going to do that with every single one of your athletes, and that's okay, and that's normal, right? But you are able to pour into every single one of your athletes on a consistent basis with the seemingly small, minute tasks, right? And that's where I think rep integrity really comes into play and is so important. And for the sake of time here, I'm not going to go into a whole lot of detail about rep integrity and like every single application and exercise here. But I think first and foremost to understand with proper alignment and movement patterns, number one, from a health and safety standpoint, that's got to be consistent, because ultimately we're trying to build more resilient athletes, right? We don't want to cause injury or, or harm in our training sessions with our athletes. So we need to be very, very intentional and clear about how we're going about doing that. And then when you're looking at the other factors, whether it's time under tension, total volume, and intensity, and all those other things, altogether, they have an impact on the total physical development of the athletes as you're implementing these into your training programs, right? So again, whether you're trying to teach and demonstrate and continue to coach your athletes through maybe a basic exercise like a kettlebell swing, and emphasizing that it's a hinge and not a squat. We know over time that if they're consistently not hinging and they're squatting, that posterior chain development is not going to be the same, right? So that's just a quick example. I think tempos are another like huge obvious one. We all know what it feels like, and while we're doing it and after we're done doing it, doing those longer eccentric tempos, time under tension, right? So it matters. It's massively different. So ultimately, at the end of the day, I think we just got to be very mindful of those adaptations that are occurring. And then finally down there at the end with consistent language, right? Calling the exercises what they are. That's helping our athletes learn and understand what they need to be doing and where they're at with you, right? So this is not to get into a debate about, depths of squatting and a quarter squat versus a full squat, right? It's just that you're being consistent with it. If you're in a certain training part of your training block in a year and you want to be more sport specific, and maybe you are doing quarter squats, but your athletes understand that there's a difference between that quarter squat versus maybe that full squat that they were doing in the off season, right? So just being consistent with that language helps them to understand, helps them to learn, and then you kind of have a more solidified compass, so to speak. And understand that no two reps are going to be identical ever, right? Just like in sports, no two plays are going to be identical. No two free throws, no two corner kicks, no two starts coming out of the blocks are going to be identical. However, there are fundamental principles to each movement and each sports skill that are necessary for it to actually be what is intended to be. So in strength training reps, agility drills, conditioning, speed work that you're doing, you have to set the foundation. So as you're teaching your athletes, they understand what the standards are, and they need to be consistently met so that the intended training objective is achieved. And we all know that there are specific adaptations to impose demands. And so if your demands or your standards change, then so do those adaptations that the athletes are going to experience. And I think that this picture and the quote that goes along with it just really hits the nail on the head on the legendary coach, John Wooden, talking about repetition and how important repetition is. So think about the massive impact that rep integrity has on overall learning and development. And thinking about, we know how it's intentional practice that gets us the successful results that we want, not just random, unfocused, kind of distracted movement or practice, right? We want to be very intentional with our practices. So rep integrity obviously goes into play there. All right, so next we're going to just go a little bit deeper into integrity. Now that we're talking about, we kind of established that from a rep integrity standpoint, but for you as a coach in your development, think about, identify what is critical to you, what your core values are. We touched on that a little bit from a movement standpoint, like what's fundamental for, a certain drill that you're doing, what's fundamental that needs to be included in, say, a power clean if you're using that, for example, right? So what are your non-negotiables there? Do the same for yourself, personally and professionally. Ask yourself, what are my non-negotiables? Wrestle with it, take time to figure it out. You might come up with it, maybe a few months from now, and then maybe a year from now that can change, and that's okay. So work through that. When you have strong convictions in what you believe, it becomes very natural to follow through and live that out with integrity. So the next thing is to evaluate if what you believe is right and it's true. And that's not an easy thing to do. So you want to look to mentors and people that you really trust and you can learn from, that you can check yourself on, and that they're going to be honest with you and they're going to tell you the truth when you need to hear it, and not just what you want to hear. So ask yourself, who are the people in my life that I can trust to speak the truth when I need it? Who are the people that I trust that have discernment and good judgment? And lean on those people to kind of help guide you through this process. And just want to touch on this other quote real quick, in that you get what you tolerate, right? So kind of not only in the weight room or in your agility and conditioning session, right? Like if we get sloppy reps, or we get kids that are consistently showing up late all the time, well, you're probably tolerating it if it keeps happening, right? So same thing in our own personal and professional lives. So just something to kind of be introspective of. So how does this help us with adapting to change, right? So I really believe that, it's going to help us when we have those foundations, those core values, and we can live them out with integrity. It kind of helps us navigate those challenges. It kind of gives us a true north on our compass, so to speak. So another cliche quote for you guys here, be a cockroach and not a dinosaur. So what I mean by that is both cockroaches and dinosaurs were around at the same time. But unfortunately for the dinosaur, it could not adapt to its environment and eventually became extinct, right? Cockroaches, on the other hand, they can crawl, they can fly, they can swim. And so unfortunately, they are still with us today. So for us as coaches and going through this profession, we want to be more like the cockroach, right? We want to not become extinct, and at the very least, and we want to not become irrelevant, right? So we need to be able to adapt with changes, and we recognize that change is hard. And something that I've kind of learned over time is that as much as change is hard as you're going through it, it's hard for everyone. Sometimes if you're the new coach for a team, maybe some of the philosophies, or maybe the drills and exercises, or the methods that you're doing things, they're so new and so different that it's hard for everybody else to adapt to that as well. So I think being mindful of that is going to help with bridging that gap. Other things to help bridge that gap is to just listen, be a really good listener so you can learn from others and diversify your learning. Also observing, pay more attention to what people do than what they say. That's going to help you with that learning and bridging that gap. And then finally, endure. It's going to take a lot of time. It's not going to be easy. It's going to require patience. It's going to be uncomfortable, but endure through it. And so finally, empowering others. I think this is a great little excerpt from the Chop Wood, Carry Water book. And then, ultimately as coaches, we're helping our athletes to be better. We're helping them to grow outside of their comfort zone. We're helping them to build all these qualities and skills, and to remember that in the process of us helping others to grow and to build, we're indeed doing that ourselves too. So just keeping that in mind. Finally, last thing I want to leave you guys with is that integrity is not easy. It's not something to take lightly. And I'm by no means a poster woman for integrity. I'm not perfect by any stretch of the imagination. My aim is just do my best every day to live with integrity, learn from my mistakes, own them along the way. And so I really appreciate this quote, which says, I'm not what I ought to be. I'm not what I want to be, not what I'm going to be, but I'm thankful I am not what I used to be. And so that is what I've got for you guys today. I really appreciate you guys giving me the time to speak on this. And like I said, I'm open to any other questions or conversations. Feel free to, that's my cell phone number if you want to text or email. I'd be more than happy to do that. So yeah, thank you everybody. I appreciate it.
Beth, I love that.